Hello and welcome, my name is Ramses and this is the first of my video series, How to Win in Of Kings and Men. I've been playing this game for roughly 300 hours, with still many more to come, both seriously and casually. I started playing these sorts of games many years ago when I joined CRPG in 2010. Back then I was a trainer and later a leader of a clan, the Thorn Brigade. Nowadays I run a new clan called the Free Company of Ravensburg, which is recruiting by the way. Safe to say, while I may be far from being the best player in OKAM, I have a few tricks and tips up my sleeves. Whether you are a new player struggling with the basics of the game or a veteran looking for new ways to beat your rivals, this guide will serve as a help making you win in Of Kings and Men. There are potentially endless videos I could make, but initially I'm going to focus on the essentials of the game, basic mechanics. Later I'll be looking at the different weapons, working with teammates, fighting alone versus many, and good builds and characters. Let me know if there are any topics in particular you'd like me to focus on. This video will focus on the very basics of OKAM. How to block an attack, how to beat spammers, what feinting is, what the right mouse button is and how you use it, lock stance, and finally I'll be spending a minute talking about the most important tip of this video, swing precision. In this part I'm also going to introduce a number of definitions and terms that I'm going to use throughout all my videos. Finally, I'll draw comparisons between OKAM and the spiritual predecessor of OKAM, Mountain Blade Warband. Why Warband, you might ask? Well, the combat system in OKAM is in many ways a continuation and improvement of the system in Warband, and therefore is relevant here. I also see many Warband veterans whom are initially confused when they try out OKAM and don't quite get the differences. In OKAM, both blocking and attacking occurs with the left mouse button. Simply hold down left mouse button and you are now in a stance. Being in a stance allows you to block enemy attacks. Simply move your mouse around to change your stance. There's no need to first cancel your stance and then initiate a new one. As long as you move your mouse and hold down left mouse button, your character will follow your mouse movement and change his stance. Release left mouse button to attack from your stance. The main difference between OKAM and Warband are two things that bears repeating. In OKAM you can fluidly change stance, and both blocking and attacking occurs with the left mouse button. Whereas in Warband, your stance is always locked, and attacking is left mouse button, blocking is right mouse button. If you've been watching closely, you will have noticed by now that there are far more stances in OKAM than Warband. There are a total of 9 stances in OKAM, however you do not always have access to all of them. Some weapons have more stances available than others. For example, you have access to all 9 stances with two-handed weapons, but only access to 3 when using a spear and shield. The stances are called overhead, upper right, right, lower right, right stab, lower left, left, and upper left. Notice the arrows here indicate how you produce the different swings. So for example, if you want to make an upper right swing, hold down left mouse button and drag it in the corresponding direction, in this case upper right. When trying to block, you must be in the correct stance. You should always try to meet incoming swings in the mirrored stance from your opponent, meaning if someone swings from their left, your right, you should use a right stance. If they swing lower right, you should use lower left. If that is hard to remember, try to think of it like this. You should try to meet the enemy's weapon with your own. Kinda realistic. Note that you don't always need to do a perfect block. In many cases you can block even though you are one stance off, meaning you are one stance away from the perfect blocking stance. Going into the details of every single stance is beyond the scope of this video, and frankly the game is a bit inconsistent on this point. So just stick to meeting your enemy's weapon with your own, and you'll be alright. Successfully blocking is indicated by a sound of weapons clashing. This sound is dependent on what weapons are actually bashing into each other. If you successfully block, you will incur a stun on your opponent, meaning you now have the upper hand. If they try to swing at you again, called spamming, they will be slower than your counterattack. I have seen many players complain about spammers, but they are really easy to beat once you know how to do it. Even with the slowest weapon facing off against the fastest, you will hit first, if you block first and then counterattack. It is therefore always possible to beat spammers and really easy once you're comfortable with your blocking. Simply block and counterattack fast. If someone manages to hit you by spamming, it is not really their fault for using the game as intended, you're simply too slow on your counterattacks. Feinting is when you start your swing in one direction and then change mid-animation. So, for example, you start a swing to the right and then you switch to the left. This is useful to get your enemy off guard and get through their block. I'm planning to do a more detailed feint guide video sometime in the future. Finally, let's talk about the right mouse button. Since both blocking and attacking occurs with the left mouse button, what use is there really for the right mouse button? Right mouse button changes based on what weapon you are using. If you're using a two-hander or a one-hander without a shield, you will do a parry. Parries are timed blocks. You can't hold parrying, but if you time it correctly and hit your enemy's weapon, you will both block and counterattack. Now that might sound great, but it is really hard to do consistently and it is easy to counter. I'll talk some more about this in the future. When you have a shield, pressing and holding right mouse button makes your character present that shield in front of his body in a defensive stance. You can then move the shield up and down by moving your mouse up and down while holding right mouse button. A quick tip here, the right mouse button shield block is a secondary function. It is good for advancing under archer fire, not a general purpose melee block. You should use a left mouse button for that. In case you have trouble with your mouse constantly changing your stance, you can use something called locked stance. As the term implies, locked stance locks your stance when you have readied it, meaning moving your mouse around will not change your stance. This is how it is in Warband. Getting into the pros and cons of locked stance deserves a video in itself. Just know that I do not recommend it, but advise you to try it out for yourself and see what works better. Last part of today's video is the most important part. I'd like to talk a little bit about swing precision. It's a term I invented and it works like this. Swing precision is the ability to produce any animation at any time. Simply put, if you want to do a specific swing, you do it. You do it immediately, you do it right, and you don't by mistake do a different stance ready and then correct. Swing precision is hard in OKAM because there are so many animations and even minuscule movements with your mouse changes your stance. However, knowing how to consistently do the correct swing is a great advantage. If you simply block and then swing away, your offense will never improve and you will be a liability to teammates because you will tend to hit them if you can't control your swings. If you have good swing precision, you get so many more options. Need to get around an enemy shield? Use lower swings to aim for the legs. Fighting someone in heavy armor? Use stabs and deal high piercing damage. Have teammates nearby and don't want to hit them? Use overheads and stabs. If, however, you always simply swing away, you always will be easy to predict and easy to defend against. Simply put, your offense will suck. That isn't to say you should always carefully aim your swings before countering the enemy, because you don't have time for that in a fight. What you should do is practice. Practice making the correct swing. Start simple by simply thinking of a swing and then doing it, without being one stance off. This might be hard at first, but before long it will be easy to do every swing on demand. You can then make the drills harder by combining feints. So you think you can do every swing without error? Try doing overhead then stab, then try overhead then lower right, then try overhead then lower left. All of these swings are hard to pull off on their own, but combined with feints, it makes them even harder. Keep adding feints until you fail, then try again. The drills will impact your memory and you will start to have better swing precision in fights without you even thinking about it. You can practice yourself pretty much any time you want. I tend to do it whenever capturing a flag in Conquest and no enemies are around. That's it for now. If you have any comments, questions or suggestions, please leave a comment below. All feedback is highly appreciated. Take care, guys.